If I had to think about the Cyprus Stock Exchange, or any exchange for that matter, where does the revenue come from? How do you run a successful stock exchange? And while I don't have experience, my experience comes from the retail sector where we list the stocks, we list the indices from other markets, and the Cyprus Stock Exchange generally isn't heard of, right? It's not one that is of great interest. And I think flipping that around makes a lot of sense for the Cyprus economy. So, if I had to kind of get into your shoes and try and imagine it, and then your insight here is really valuable, is how do you run a stock exchange that's successful?
For any exchange, the revenues come from various sources, either from a traditional core business or either from a number of, let's say, new services offered by the exchange. Allow me, first of all, Dinos, to say that the exchange in Cyprus is actually under its let's say, jurisdiction, under its umbrella, has two main operations which traditionally were evolved on the markets.
Welcome to the Financial Frontiers podcast. My name is Dinos. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share this channel. It helps us create more content and deliver more episodes for you. Hope you enjoy this episode.
Here we go. Here's another episode of the Financial Frontiers podcast. Today with me, I have an esteemed guest, Nicos Trypatsas, who is the acting general manager of the Cyprus Stock Exchange. I think the insight and the value that we're going to get from you today, Nicos, as your high position at an exchange is something that I believe will be very valuable to our audience. Being investors mainly, and also businesses that are involved in mainly the retail brokerages, that are involved in the retail financial services sector, investors. Please, let's start with you introducing yourself. Investing is also a good term. I mean, we're talking about that topic. So let's start with you introducing yourself. Let's give your background, and let's get into a discussion over here about exchanges.
I would like to thank you very much, Dinos, for the invitation to come here and talk about the Cyprus Stock Exchange. Where do we stand today? What are the objectives and the goals for the future? And how we can and also to elaborate further on the importance of the stock exchange in our financial sector and in the market in general. I am Nicos Trypatsas. I am the acting general manager of the Cyprus Stock Exchange for the last 5 or 6 years, I think nearly 6 years. Before that, I was I had the position of the chief officer at Cyprus Stock Exchange. Actually, on the exchange, I have been recruited since 1994, something like 30 years now before, on the exchange. Before that, and after my studies in Greece and in Scotland for 6 years, I served in the Cyprus Chamber of Commerce and Industry for nearly 4 years. At that time, the Cyprus Stock Exchange, the Cyprus Chamber of Commerce and Industry had under its auspices the unofficial over-the-counter market of the exchange. It was actually the stage before the official opening of the exchange, which happened in 1996 in Cyprus. And at that time, I had been recruited by the first council of the exchange as the first employee at that time. I remember to assist the council at that time for forming the first regulations in the market after the legislation at that time was passed by the House of Parliament in Cyprus. And we managed, at that time with I would say minimum staff at that time to open the exchange in Cyprus, based of course on the legislation that was passed at that time. And since then the exchange passed through a number of good and difficult times, I would say it. Since then, we have introduced a number of plans for development, for infrastructure, for advancing the market. And we are now here to elaborate further on the current, I would say, status and on the current, let's say, plans and future plans of the exchange.
That is quite an extensive experience, yes. And I think a unique one, being involved as one of the first people of something that didn't exist before, you
yes.
know, and an exchange which is generally, not obviously something new. Obviously every country, as we know, has their exchanges. It's a big contribution to the
yes.
economy.
I would add on this by saying that at that time there were no experiences, in Cyprus in this sector, and of course based on the instructions of the council at the time, also for a number of consultants. We have managed, gradually to introduce a number of, let's say, development plans at the time, a technical infrastructure, new at that time, the first electronic system, the first screen-based electronic system. After this was deployed on a remote basis from the brokerage houses. And I remember one very big let's say project at that time, which all of the market was found trouble on this, was actually the so-called dematerialization of securities at the time, because at that time the registries of the listed securities were handled by the registrars of each listed company on a paper-based form. And this, as you can imagine, and by having, let's say, an excessive demand at that time, this caused a number of issues. So we proceeded to have a gradual dematerialization of securities on a paperless based system, and this resulted on having since then centrally by the exchange fully automated the so-called back office of securities and of settlement of all transactions. So this was at that time a very important project, and of course since then a number of other projects was also put in place.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges there, and I think that experience is quite unique. So, from the regulation, from how do you even list the companies, what blueprint do you follow? A lot of the learnings I think that you were involved in is quite valuable, and I hope to get the most out of this conversation here in terms of those learnings and where the stock exchange is today and what the future plans are. So before we get to today, I think one interesting topic that maybe needs to be addressed, and I guess in some ways is almost like a taboo. People don't want to talk about it much, but we know about the bubble, right? That happened, and that was in the early days, or let's call it, in the beginning, which just added more challenges to you, right? So in 99, 2000, there was a bubble, and then it burst. And I think from that, it created a bad stain, let's call it, in generally the public, which didn't help and just added more challenges to you. Maybe we can talk about that. How does a bubble happen? In my view, it's not unique to just the Cyprus Stock Exchange. It can happen, right? It can happen, and it happens from trends, bloated, prices of stocks that is not, in value or equitable to what the actual stock's value is, right? So let's hear your insight about that.
Okay, I would agree with you that this is not a Cypriot phenomenon. This happened in many countries. And at that time there was I remember an extreme, I would say, interest at the time from all people, and excessive demand, I would say, in the securities at the time. However, things, I will try to be more positive and say that things since then have changed a lot. Of course, there were, say, problems identified regarding the supervision, the let's say the legislation, which all of these gaps have been filled since then. I would say that towards this direction, it was very important to have also the continuous European directives on the sector that have been incorporated in either the legislation or the regulatory framework of the country and of the exchange in general. So this helped us. Say filling the gaps that were found at that time. Of course, this happened 25 years ago. We all need to turn a page on this, because I would comment and say that the exchange is a very important tool in any economy, and of course in the Cypriot economy. And it has to be strengthened, it has to be supported, it has to be, let's say, more widely approved by the companies here in Cyprus, so to be able to play a vital role as an alternative means of financing of the companies and help the economy in general and the companies in general. And on the other hand, to provide to the investors with wider opportunities, with wider, let's say, investment products. So in order to have this, let's say, changed ecosystem, I would agree with you that it has to be strengthened, it has to be put on an even better, let's say, position for the future, yes.
Of course, and while these things happen, these challenges that appear come in the path of whatever it is that any entity is going through, whether it's a business, a private business, or something like the stock exchange, which has so many moving parts and is a complex thing to run. How do you address these, and how do you overcome them? So, for me, if I had to think about the Cyprus Stock Exchange, or any exchange for that matter, right, is where does the revenue come from? How do you run a successful stock exchange? And while I don't have experience, my experience comes from the retail sector, where we list the stocks, we list the indices from other markets. And the Cyprus Stock Exchange generally isn't heard of, right? It's not one that is of great interest. And I think flipping that around makes a lot of sense for the Cyprus economy. So, if I had to kind of get into your shoes and try and imagine it, and then your insight here is really valuable, is how do you run a stock exchange that's successful? And where are the revenue streams, right? Let's hear your insight there. And get into the
yes, for any exchange, the revenues come from various sources, either from a traditional core business or either from a number of, let's say, new services offered by the exchange. Allow me, first of all, Dinos, to say that the exchange in Cyprus is actually under its let's say, jurisdiction, under its umbrella, has two main operations which traditionally were evolved on the markets. The one is a pure stock exchange issues, which by saying stock exchange we mean the listings on the market, the continuing applications that have to be followed by the listed issuers, the listed companies, and the market, that is the daily operation of the exchange. I mean, in Cyprus, we do have an electronic screen-based trading system, which operates between 10:30 and 5:20 on a daily basis, 5 days per week, and this is the trading session of each day. The second, let's say, component, I would say, of the market, which is very vital for the operation of the smooth operation of the market, is the so-called central securities and depository of the exchange. So by a specific legislation that provides for this depository operation, the exchange also operates the central electronic central registry and depository of the exchange. So for each day, for any transaction that is being done, let's say within the time frame I just referred before, this transaction it should be cleared and sorted out in a couple of days in a so-called T+2 cycle, which is widely internationally approved, and with the end result of having the investor who bought the shares the shares to be written on its name, on its account on the central registry, and for the seller of the securities to reduce his holdings again properly on the on his own account. And of course within this time frame, through the interested brokers, the seller should receive the value of the holdings he sold 2 days before, and at the same time the buyer should have put in place the money for the acquisition, and so all this operation is done through the stock exchange centrally with a number of let's say proper regulations and operations that safeguard actually the whole operation. And I have to say that since the putting in place of these systems, we didn't have any problems of not being, of improper settlement of securities or whatsoever. So we run the process with every security and proper, let's say, safeguards for any investor. Yeah.
And so, when it comes to revenue, at least, what has come to my awareness, being involved on the retail side, one revenue stream that I can think of is, for example, like the CBOE, the Chicago Bureau
Board of Trade.
Of Trade, yeah. To get the feed of the stocks that are listed on that exchange, there's a charge. If a broker needs it, and it's not cheap, right?
Revenue stream can be obtained either from initial listing fees. Let's say if a company lists its own securities, it has to pay something as an initial listing fee. We have the annual listing fee again throughout the period that the company remains listed on the exchange. The company also has to pay, say, an amount. So there is a revenue stream also for the exchange to keep centrally, electronically, the registry of securities. These are considered as core business of the exchanges. At the same time, there could be revenues from data selling and dissemination of information regarding the daily fluctuations of the share prices. Another revenue that it is internationally, let's say, used and absorbed by the exchanges. And of course, at the same time, an exchange, since there's any organization, can also deploy any other, let's say, services and operations that can receive money. In our case, for example, we do provide in Cyprus for a number of international codes. For example, each company to trade internationally under the international, let's say, code registration, it has its own so-called ISIN number, International Securities Identification number. It is more or less similar to the barcodes that any let's say, food, for example, have in the supermarkets. So at the same time, we do provide in Cyprus, for example, this these codes at a fee. We also have a cooperation, for example, with the London Stock Exchange team in terms of providing the so-called LACE code. LACE are the legal entity identifier codes, which are a unique, again, a code for companies, for example. And I can remember, for example, we do have in Cyprus and have been appointed by the Securities Commission as the coordinator of the OAM system. The OAM is a automated mechanism for announcements and dissemination by security. So there are a number of operations that we do provide and can bring, let's say, income to an exchange. Yes. But the most important thing is, first of all, to strengthen the market in Cyprus further. This is our basic and continuous aim. And by strengthening the market, we should speak of more listings on the market and more big listings on the market. This can bring in a number of benefits and more related income if we manage to do so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good opportunity, I think, to expand a little bit on that conversation.
Yes.
So, I have a small to medium-sized business. I've been in operations for 8 years. It's a private business. I haven't even thought about the idea of, listing on the stock exchange. It hasn't been on my agenda, but maybe it should be, right? Because like my business, which, at the moment, is healthy. It's growing. There's opportunity, whatever it is. Maybe some small investor wants to participate in that. And a way to do that is to provide that platform, or that central place where it is possible, because, at the moment, as it is private, I'm not really interested in having small investors come and buying, shares out of my business. It doesn't make sense for me. But maybe listing, that makes sense. So let's talk about that. And one question is, how does a small to medium-sized business get listed on the Cyprus Stock Exchange?
Yes, I do have to say that the exchange has provided, in the last years, has provided for a number of segments and markets to cater for different, I would say, market needs in terms of the companies that want to list on the exchange. In the last years, I can recall that we have proceeded to make a special market, which I would say ideally for small to medium SMEs, or let's say startup companies, or small companies with more relaxed criteria, I would say, compared to the traditional previous regulated market, which has more strict criteria. And of course, this market, we call it ECM market, the emerging markets companies market, the ECM market. This provides for such specialized cases, and this proved to be successful in the last year. We managed to list. I remember that at the moment we have 52 companies which are listed on this market. These companies are mostly medium to small to medium sized, I would say, companies. They can enter the market with less, let's say, share capital needed compared to the other market, with less free float to shareholders. So, in general, with less strict criteria. And we have managed to list a number of companies, Cypriot companies with foreign interests, Greek companies. So a number of companies have opted to list on this ECM market. And I guess that the end result at the moment is quite positive on this aspect. So at the same time, we do offer the traditional regulated market for bigger companies with more criteria, and we can also list on the market corporate bonds, which is another very important component worldwide in terms of investment. And I should say that for corporate bonds, based on a decision which has been put by the exchange in the last 3 years, we managed to get a further tax advantage on these corporate bonds. Actually, what the government and the parliament passed actually on this, it reduced the rate of the tax deduction on the interest given, let's say, every 6 months to the corporate bond from 30% to 3%. So this is another good, let's say, tax incentive that was brought in for corporate bonds. Corporate bonds, as you are aware, is a very attractive and demanding market worldwide, in the States, but I mean in everywhere. So it's something I would also like to develop in Cyprus. So we have also provided for the capability of listing funds on the exchange. As you are aware, the funds industry is an industry that is now under, let's say, a very close and positive monitoring from a number of professionals. So somebody can list its fund on the Cyprus Stock Exchange, or even provide, the fund registry for being handled by the exchange. So we have also, in general, we have catered for a number of business needs to assist the companies find their way on the exchange.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So, for me, that emerging company markets, which you just mentioned, is one segment, as I understood, that is on the Cyprus Stock Exchange.
Yes.
And that is one, let's call it segment that, as my business, for example, would be one that would be able to enter.
Yes, just to give me the opportunity to say something on this market, in order to present the exchange to a number of new companies, to startups and new companies, small SMEs, together with the Cyprus Stock Exchange and the European Center of Mechanism that is under the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We are together on next Wednesday, 13th of March. We are organizing at the premises of the Chamber of Commerce a presentation, especially about on the issue how to get a listing on the Cyprus Stock Exchange, how the exchange can serve as an alternative means of financing for new companies, and we have structured I assume a quite interesting, let's say, schedule of this day. So we are also bringing a couple of corporate advisors, nominal advisors in this market to elaborate on their experiences on the ECM market and what companies have brought in and how the companies have benefited from this, let's say, procedure. So it's an open, let's say, invitation and discussion. So somebody can come on the Cyprus Stock Exchange. On next Wednesday, 3:30 in the afternoon, to hear. These developments. Yeah.
It's interesting, and I'm going to try and make it, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think just for the sake, just one question that's just ringing in my mind. Yeah, one basic question is there some kind of minimum that I need to have in terms of turnover or profitability? Do I have to have a minimum of employees?
Not about employees, but in terms of the capital and the free float, yes, there are certain criteria depending on the market and the segment you are interested to get in. So the company should be converted from a private company to a public company. This is a prerequisite. And on the other, regarding the share capital, it depends actually on the market somebody wants to enter in. So I don't have it in front of me, but somebody who's interested can approach us and explain further on the issue. Yeah.
Okay. And I think stating the obvious is okay. I think what is the incentive for an investor, right? So for a business, and just going back to what is required out of running a stock exchange, and in my mind, and you can elaborate on this, and then also perhaps elaborate on what is the incentive of each participant. So the one is obviously companies to get listed on the stock exchange so that there are available products that investors can trade on. And then obviously investors. The more investors there are, and the more hype there is.
Yes,
and more...
companies have a number of benefits to get a listing on the exchange, in my view. The one issue is that they can have first of all they can raise money if they manage to, of course, and they present their data and the rest. They can so it's an alternative means of fundraising, and the exchange, the securities market can operate, I would say, supplementary to the banking sector, a number of other, let's say, means of funding. So this is one. So a company can issue a capital needed to invest to a number of productive, let's say, strategic plans it can explore. This is one issue. The other, the company runs under a scrutiny to get a listing on the exchange. So this give a better picture and a profile to a company to get a listing on the exchange. On the part of the investor, the investor knows that the investor receives let's say a more transparent picture of the company, because the company, as you're aware, has to issue, apart from the initial, let's say, prospectus to get a listing on the market, on a continuous basis. It has to produce its own accounts, have yearly, any important announcements for any corporate action, for any takeover and merger whatsoever. So all of these, which are important and obligatory in a market, of course, gives to an investor a more transparent picture of the market, how it managed to achieve its goals, and what are the future, let's say, plans for any listed security. So the transparency is a vital issue. I'll say at the same time, the shareholder, the investor in securities can quite easily, with easy procedures, buy and sell the securities, say, any time. The exchanges, the trading venues, the exchanges provide trade mechanisms for each security. So there's always a price of the value of security, which is defined by the market. It's another important issue for a listing. So and of course, the investor, if you have a continuous good and promising companies entering the market, for an investor, this gives him more opportunities to examine, and always in accordance with the advice by the relevant brokers or the relevant advisors, which are appointed accredited by a Securities Commission. He can take his own decision on this. We are not advisors. We're a trading venue. So somebody always have to get an advice from accredited people on doing this business. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, for me, in my mind, for the investor, what it is accessibility, right? So, for example, Elon Musk has got Starlink, for example, which is private at the moment, and I want to get access to that. I want to invest because I really believe in the future of that business.
But you cannot invest in
I cannot invest because it's private.
Yes.
So its accessibility is one,
Yes.
I think, major benefit for investors. Opportunity to invest in a business that has been listed, and then there are two obvious reasons why an investor would do that. Well, one is that the actual value of the stock goes up because the business is performing well and the market defines it. And secondly, there's obviously the dividends, right?
Yes.
And if you can expand maybe on dividends, if let's say right now I define what dividends as a private company, obviously there are some criteria every 2 years, whatever it is, minimum 70% has to be issued out. This is for private companies. A public company, is there an obligation you have to give out dividends, or if the company decides, a public company decides, we're not going to issue dividends because it's going to go back into the business and invest it for further growth? What are the criteria there?
Well, it depends on the company, actually. I mean, if the company wants to reinvest the profits, I mean, and not distribute a dividend, the board of directors of the company evaluates the situation of the company and accordingly decides. And also, it can also defer the issue to the annual general meeting of the shareholders and decide on this. So I think that, it is common that, I mean, once a company has a steady, I would say, income stream and profitability, it's practice, I mean, for these such companies to distribute dividends, and of course, it's something that is always evaluated by an investor or a potential investor, the dividend and the percentage of a dividend given out by each company. So the dividend policy is an important issue. At the same time, investing at the moment in the securities of the Cyprus Stock Exchange, there is no capital gains tax in terms of any capital gain that is it could be possibly, I mean, received by each investor. So this is another benefit that somebody has to evaluate any possibilities of investing. So there are a number of incentives, as I referred before, both to the companies and also to the investor to accordingly evaluate. And of course, always there is a whole decision, I mean, how to proceed further.
At the moment, as the way things stand now, how can the average person get access and invest in any stock company that is listed on the stock exchange? What is the way that somebody is able to do that today?
Yes, the investor should open an account with an investment firm, actually a brokerage house, which is approved by the Securities Commission always. And the exchange should proceed and open a trading account actually with one of the broker he bargains with. I mean, with him, he has to fill in initially a number of documentation that is produced in accordance with the legislation of the Securities Commission, and the intermediary, the investment advisor, proceeds to the so-called KYC, know your customer process for each investor. He's responsible for this very important situation because, as you are aware, we are now under a number of European directives on this. So somebody, an intermediary, has to strictly follow this process. And once everything is checked and okay, then it's up to the investor to proceed how we can move forward.
Okay, so I mean that for me screams out really loud how the Cyprus Stock Exchange potentially could follow as a strategy to get many more investors into the stock exchange. So the brokerages that are, to my awareness, which brokerages that exist that I know of, are these really big ones like the interactive brokers of the world who have millions and millions of investors and are connected to different exchanges. I don't think the Cyprus Stock Exchange
this is something beyond our jurisdiction. I mean, this is another kind of trading, I mean, worldwide. In our case, we do have our own brokers, I mean, which are registered in Cyprus. So I mean, the trading is done only via these brokers. I have to say that regarding the brokerage house, since in the last, I think something like 15 years, we have a cooperation with the Athens Stock Exchange in terms of using the same platform, in terms of the same screen-based trading system, and based on the European passport of being activated in another country. What we have done actually, we are using under a license the Greek system in terms of trading with the same, let's say, trading hours and the same platform. Of course, we are autonomous, different exchanges, but we are using the same system. But at the same time, what both exchanges have done by, let's say, exploiting on this opportunity given by the European so-called passport on the financial markets, is that we have given the opportunity to our members, to mostly all of the Cypriot members, the Cypriot brokerage houses, to obtain, if they would like to, a listing, to obtain an activity and being a member on the Athens exchange. So if somebody, an investor today contacts a Cypriot member here in Cyprus, which primarily is a member of a Cyprus Stock Exchange, if he's interested about, he can also trade on the Greek stocks because the broker he's an active equal secondarily member, I would say, on the Cypriot or on the Greek market. Vice versa, the same happens with a number of the biggest Greek members are also members on our exchange based on remotely from Athens. So a Greek member in Athens, who's a member of the Cyprus Stock Exchange, can also serve one of his clients in Greece via the same system. And the same happens also for a number of banking institutions, banking organizations who act as custodians. Custodians are those that undertake the work to be done after the transaction takes place, actually, until the final settlement of each security. So a number of Cypriot banks, given this passporting, are registered also as custodians operational on the Greek exchange to serve the clients there, and vice versa. A number of Greek banks are registered secondarily as custodians in Cyprus and additionally can serve the clients respectively. So this may happen with the infrastructure we have, yes.
Understood. Another question I have is, let's say, for example, there's a company in London, which is outside of the EU, or let's say a company in Lithuania, just example, and they wanted to get listed on the stock exchange in Cyprus. Is that possible, or do they have to be a registered company in Cyprus?
We are now entering into technical issues at the moment. However, it's more easy to do this via a Cypriot company, but dual listings can be done also in the markets. At the moment, we do is not a secret. We have a Cypriot company which is dual listed in London and in Cyprus. This is Bank of Cyprus, and this kind of business. In the past, we also have our banks listed on the Greek market and the Cypriot market. Yes, this can be provided and can be done. Of course, you have to provide for the mechanism for the clearing and settlement with an exchange or via international, let's say, clearing houses. That's why it's a bit technical issue, but it can be done. Yes, it can be done given a number of conditions that have to be fulfilled. Yes.
That's super interesting, and another very big question
this gives me the idea to inform you about our steps that we are now entering into regarding the Cypriot bonds. As you are aware, on a yearly basis, the Cypriot government issues. Most of the Cypriot debt, it's issued abroad with the international issues. The so-called European EMTNs issues, and these bonds at the moment are listed on a foreign exchange, not in Cyprus. And now we are in, let's say, in discussion in the final stages with the Ministry of Finance, and the aim also is to have shortly these bonds listed also on our market as in dual listing. So. And this is the aim of this move is to have the Cypriot bond listed in its home country. This is one reason, and the other is for Cypriot, let's say, investors being able to invest more easily on the Cypriot bond. In order to facilitate this process, we have signed an agreement with we have also done an announcement last year, and we're also close to it, very close to launch it with with the Swiss Exchange and Depository, so-called SIS6, for its infrastructure. And based on this process, once we decide that from that day the bonds also listed on the Cyprus Stock Exchange, we have established this mechanism with this exchange in order to be able to bring from abroad holdings in Cyprus and vice versa, so as to facilitate the so-called cross-border movement trading for these securities.
I'm interested to know, how does the pricing of that, so let's say for dual listing, and you brought Bank of Cyprus, for example, right? They listed on the Cyprus Stock Exchange, and they're also listed on the London Stock Exchange. But as we know, those are obviously different pools of markets, yes, right? The Cyprus Stock Exchange has obviously got a much smaller amount of investors, while the London Stock Exchange is a lot more. And I would imagine that defines also what the stock price is, right? If there are demand and supply, just, the general, let's call it macroeconomics of how things work, demand and supply, and then the price adjusts. Is the price of a dual listing, like Bank of Cyprus, for example, exactly the same, the Cyprus Stock Exchange, as it is on the London Stock Exchange?
To be honest with you, I don't follow on a daily basis this. However, from what I have noticed, there are no big deviations, I would say, in the prices. No, because with technology now, things are quite easily to see. I mean, what's happening in the other market. Of course, the market absorbs any new developments and corporate news that comes in for any company. So I wouldn't say that there are big differences. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, there's always, in theory, there are always this difference called the arbitrage, I would say, yes, process. There are sometimes space for this arbitrage, let's say, process, but when the company becomes more and more liquid, I would say, this is more, let's say, not normal to find it, I mean, quite easily. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Let's talk about liquid. Let's talk about liquidity,
yes,
right? And, just to build a little bit of context on that, liquidity in my mind means availability of money and the fluidity, let's call it, and in terms of buying and selling the stocks that are available. And that obviously means that there needs to be, first of all, available products. So that is, corporations should be listed, and then there's available stocks to be traded on. And for me, in my mind, is you need people in the shop, right? As many investors, the more investors there are, the happier, the better things are. And that's liquidity. More people wanting to buy and available to sell.
Yes.
What are the challenges around creating good liquidity in the Cyprus Stock Exchange?
Well, in order to have good liquidity, I would agree with you about your comments. Is first of all to have, let's say, a number of new and big companies on the exchange. So this is something that we have a continuous goal on this. I mean, to have more companies on the exchange. In my view, there are very good Cypriot companies. If we speak only of Cypriot companies, that it could be. Let's say, consider the possibility of getting a listing on the exchange and proceed to a proper capital raising to open their investor base on a more wide, let's say, level. This is something that I would like to see it happening in Cyprus. And that's why I would say that the Cypriot ecosystem and the Cypriot, let's say, business environment should further, and more, let's say, seriously consider the possibility of getting a listing on the exchange. And there are a number of companies in a number of sectors which are successful in Cyprus. I would recall, for example, the medical institutions, private institutions, the private universities, for example, just to mention a couple of them, pharmaceutical companies, shipping companies, ship management companies. There are a lot of, but even smaller companies, more dynamic companies. I cannot say, names, of course, but there are a number of sectors that should consider their way on the exchange. And also, there are a number of let's say, infrastructure. I would call them, let's say, projects like, for example, ports, casinos, marinas, all of them who receive, also relevant licenses from authorities. That should be, let's say, in one way or another, let's say, I wouldn't say obliged, but direct, to consider also the exchange for a number of reasons, for the better establishment in the country, and for a number of reasons. If we for example, I would, I'm just considering now that you have recently seen, for example, the Venizelos airport, for example, getting a listing on the Athens exchange. So all of these utilities and all of these plans could consider, their way on the exchange. If you have such big companies on the exchange, then you could more easily consider a more wide base, a more liquid base, and of course a better liquidity in the market than today. So be able to have a better picture in the market, and the more easy to the investor to enter and exit the market, which is a very important, let's say, consideration.
That is so interesting, and I can tell you for sure, since you mentioned the Venizelos airport.
Just for example, I said
that is a beautiful example.
Yes.
And if I don't know if the Larnaca airport is listed, but
it's not.
I would. Tourism is very important for Cyprus. Why not? That's so interesting.
This is why I could tell that the businessmen in Cyprus and the ecosystem should start considering, the possibilities of getting on the exchange, in a number of areas and sectors. Yeah?
Wow. So let's talk a little bit about what are the current biggest challenges. We have touched it a little bit, but what are the future plans of the Cyprus Stock Exchange?
Just to let you know that, because you've said before, to refer to a number of revenue streams that the exchange could have and what other sectors the exchange could possibly be get involved in it. Just to mention that the exchange also, apart from the traditional core business as I described before, the exchange in the last years have also entered into the on the energy sector. By saying energy sector, in the last years we have been appointed and instructed by the Ministry of Agriculture and by the government actually to serve as the auctioneer regarding the emission allowances, the credit to the government of the Republic, which are traded on a specific trading exchange in Europe. So part of the job, of a clearing and settlement job is done by the exchange based on the know-how we have and the expertise we have. This is one involvement on the energy sector. Also, 3 years ago, I can recall, we have also submitted a proposal to the Ministry of Commerce and Energy to undertake the operation of the let's say the competitive electricity market in Cyprus. Of course, the decision politically was actually to be taken by the TSO, the transmission officer in Cyprus. But even with this new arrangement, we were also positive to get in the process, and we have formally sign an agreement with the TSO, the transmission officer in Cyprus, and once this market is going to be ready to start operation, from what we hear, it will be next year. The exchange also will run a part of the business regarding clearing, settlement, and risk management on this. So it's another involvement we had on the energy sector, and the other one based on the cooperation we had with the Athens partners in terms of the platform we had with the Athens exchange. 4 years ago, in Athens, they have established the first energy exchange, Hellenic Energy Exchange. So we are one of the initial founders of the exchange with 10% of the share capital. In order to be able to gain more experiences and let's say a better return on the investment we had. So this proved to be, quite successful until now. So we are trying also, apart from the core business, to differentiate and enter into any other, let's say, promising or let's say new or let's say challenging, I would say, new challenges based on the experiences we had, so to be able to elaborate further on this know-how we had. Yeah.
How interesting, and in these emerging technologies, I would put it, where the energy sector, I think, is going to change quite. I think it's already happening.
Yes,
it's already happening, and renewable energy, vehicles, electric vehicles, solar panels, whatever it is.
We have also recently done a new number of changes on our pricing policy and procedures, so as to cater for the listing of the so-called green bonds on the market. At the moment, there is a green bond who has received a preliminary approval for listing on the exchange. We are now waiting for its final circulation and results to have it shortly on the exchange, listed on the market. So we have also catered for this sector, the green bond sector as well, which is again quite promising and widely accepted in Europe.
So decisions like that, in terms of diversifying as a Cyprus Stock Exchange, the people who are running it, as far as I know, it is a government-owned institution. And I would imagine that, the approval process and the agility is a little bit more rigid in terms of deciding on things like this, where to take the money, and where to invest and what to diversify on, and, how generally the Cyprus Stock Exchange progresses and moves forward. Are there any plans around that, or challenges that you're currently facing with regard to how the Cyprus Stock Exchange is currently governed?
You speak about the privatization, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. You are right. I mean, you've said this is correct, that the exchange is still a so-called public corporate body. Actually, it's owned by the state, by the government. So it is coming under the so-called in Cyprus semi-governmental organizations. So yes, there in the last couple of decades, I would say, there were initial thoughts of getting privatized the exchange. Actually, most of the exchanges, in Europe and worldwide, are already privatized. So these thoughts also were extended in Cyprus for having the potential of the exchange being privatized. But it is only in the last 3 or 4 years, I remember, that a sole decision was taken by the Council of Ministers to proceed further. And based on this, yes, there's a process of running the privatization of the exchange. In order to do this, it's a huge, plan that we run together with the Ministry of Finance, which is the owner actually of the responsible ministry and the owner of the exchange. Since there are no wide experiences, I would say, at the moment for privatization in Cyprus, even for utilities and the rest. So, but anyway, since the decision of the Council of Ministers, there was a tender run about this for recruiting expertise from consultants, and yes, very quite recently we have proceeded to drafting the relevant legislation to provide for such a strategic move for the exchange. At the moment, this draft bill has been sent out for comment, for circulation to the stakeholders. The comments were received last month. They are now under, let's say, under evaluation. So shortly, I think that the relevant and of course the necessary legislation for any further moves should be placed in the Attorney General's office and then in the Parliament for getting an approval. I don't expect personally to have any objections, because all of the market would like to see this happening. And immediately after this, the passage of the bill from the Parliament, then an international tender will run so to to proceed for finding a strategic investor for acquiring the Cyprus Stock Exchange, and the criteria will be for having a reputable exchange. I mean, being a part of the new process, and the reason behind that is that since there is a need for opening new corridors for Cyprus Stock Exchange, to bring in let's say more expertise, more know-how, we think that if we are lucky to find an exchange that is going to be interested with this wide let's say experience opportunities, in my view, this will be very helpful for the Cypriot capital market. Yeah.
I agree with that, right? Because when an institution is private, then there's a lot more flexibility with decisions and whatever it is. I think that is a good incentive.
But this comes under the whole, let's say, perception that we have about the exchange, because I believe, and in the exchange we believe that we need to have a strong exchange in the market. The exchange is a very important tool in each market. It's an alternative means of financing. Is the actual picture of the economy of each market. We see it in every crisis, in every war, in every whatever happens worldwide. We see that the first thing that we notice is the fluctuation in the market and the importance given in the markets. So the exchange should be in order to have a solid, let's say, financial market, and because I frequently hear let's say the desire to have a regional hub and the rest. In terms of the financial market, by having a very strong stock exchange is very vital for this objective. Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense, right? It's a reflection of how the economy is doing, and if the Cypriot economy is doing well, then why not have that reflected within the Cyprus Stock Exchange and have external people participate in that? That's very interesting.
And I agree. It is very. If we speak of foreign direct investments with transparent, let's say, environment and view and let's say approach, and to avoid any issues we have with a number of well-known problems. In the recent past about a number of other schemes and the rest. I think by investing on the Cyprus Stock Exchange with all these, let's say, procedures I explained before about the know your customer process, all of this and all this transparency rules and the regulation, the stock exchange is a most transparent picture of each market. Yeah.
In the retail sector with brokerages that we work with, the regulation is really tight, right? And I know this, a Cypriot investment firm that's regulated over here is allowed to onboard European investors. Not so much, there's a lot of regulation around any citizen outside of the EU, and especially the US. They cannot onboard any US citizen, for example.
Yes,
Does the Cyprus Stock Exchange have that same limitation? If somebody from the US, for example, wanted to invest on stocks in the Cyprus Stock Exchange?
No, we don't have a limitation to invest, but of course the intermediary company, the brokerage house, has to abide to the rules before registering an investor from the US, so he has to comply with the required. Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Yeah, got it. Because that's they need to pass through the brokerages.
In our case, we are more welcome to have investors from big countries worldwide.
Yes.
But however, the intermediary should always proceed to the proper KYC and abide to any rules.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, there are continuous, very huge, let's say, work, to be done on the compliance, which is even on our side, even on the brokerage house side, they are all very, there are continuous strict regulations and more regulations that, of course, this provides more costs, unfortunately, but it's regulation European, you have to comply with it. Yeah.
So is it the CySEC and the central bank that regulates the Cyprus Stock Exchange?
The Cyprus Stock Exchange is actually regulated by CySEC. It's CySEC that provides for a license for the operation of the exchange and of the depository of the exchange, and is a CySEC that also provides the licenses for the intermediaries, the brokers. Central bank also regulates us in the area of the clearing house, the depository, because money also runs from us to exchange. I mean, in terms of the transactions. So yes, we have to abide to a number of rules that the central bank puts here on this year. So we have a double, I would say, supervision, on this part, yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Nicos, we're running into 1 hour here. We've expanded on quite a lot of topics, future plans, which sound really interesting. Is there anything you feel that you might want to expand on regarding the Cyprus Stock Exchange?
No, I think. Thank you very much, Dino. You gave me the opportunity to expand on even on the oldest, let's say, times of the exchange, but mostly on the current, on the future important objectives of the exchange. Okay, but I would just, to summarize, say that it was a good opportunity for me to express, our plans and views here. I would again reiterate that for us to have an exchange is vital for the economy and for the businesses. So of Cyprus. So I will be very happy to see in the future the exchange being, let's say, more strengthened and developed towards this objective.
Thank you very much for your time, Nicos, and I will definitely, really like to see a future where the Cyprus Stock Exchange is actually more known generally, and something that's interesting for investors and businesses.
Yes.
Thank you for your time. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed this talk a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Remember to hit the like button. Comment down below if you have any guests you'd like me to interview, and any topic you'd like me to discuss in future episodes.